Coming to you from Strings and Things Studio in Ventura, California, I'm Kaity.
I'm Ann.
And I'm Karin.
And this is the Strings Unraveled Book Club. Hello, everyone.
Woo-hoo.
How's it going? How y'all doing? I know.
Oh, good.
For all transparency, Annie, Kiran, and I were already chatting for a few minutes before we started recording, so we all kind of know how each other are doing, but still, it's polite to ask, right?
Yeah.
How about, what do you guys work? What are you guys knitting?
Asking you. I love that question.
What are you knitting, Ann?
Okay. So, Kaity, have you ever taken drugs to a party and then got people addicted? Because I'm on my sixth Tolsta.
Oh.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
So I'm this is probably the last-ish one.
Sure.
Right.
I can stop. I can
doing
stop when I want it. Kiran, stop winking at me, Kiran. Okay, so this one I'm Frankensteining textures from different lace sweaters. So the collar is Alpine Bloom.
Yep.
And then I have February Lady lace.
Oh my goodness. I haven't thought about February Lady in a minute.
Then I have a texture from Ilha. There's a really cool ribbing that you do in it and a cable.
Nice.
And now I'm doing the lace from Garden Cardi, which is actually a sweater I haven't started yet, but I have yarn for, and I did the swatch and really enjoyed the lace. And then I'm doing a sweater called Cancun, which I think I talked about on our regular podcast. And I'm doing one of the lace patterns from that will be next after the sleeves and body breakup. And then the very bottom is going to be the like a feather and fan that I have in a couple tops.
What yarn are you using?
So it is something I found on clearance at Fabric Town.
Love clearance.
Jody Long. Yeah, Jody Long, My Little Sunshine, $5.50 for 100 grams.
That's awesome.
60%. Yeah. So my sweater will cost $11.
You can't buy
cotton, 40% acrylic.
You can't buy a sweater at Target for that. That's amazing.
Right. See, sometimes this is like you beat the market on this hobby.
I would say maybe
not most
0.01% of the time.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm really, really having a good time with this one. I'm into the yoke. I'm into the last few rounds of the yoke, which are the never-ending rounds.
Right.
But because the pattern changes are keeping the rhythm, it's way fun.
Oh, that sounds fun.
What are you guys doing?
Karen, what are you working on?
I'm doing another test. I'm doing a test crochet for one of my favorite crocheters, Natalie of Detroit Knots. And I have 3 skeins of Miss Babs.
Lovely.
Ooh.
And it's a vest.
That color's gorgeous.
I know, and it's working up great. And look at I just started yesterday. I got the 2 fronts done. I'm about to join the fronts. It's crochet.
Cute.
It's a really cool. It's like a crochet moss or linen stitch. So it's you're gonna do a single crochet, skip one, single crochet, skip one, but you're offsetting it. You're gonna skip one, chain one.
Right.
Basically you got to chain in between, but instead of going into the chain space, you're actually going into the chain. So it's a little different texture. It's not so open as if you were going into the space, but I really like how this color is working up.
What's the name of the color? And tell us about it.
Okay, so it has sea greens and a little bit of ivy, a little pops of pale mint, and some pops of red, pops of purple, like barely. It is called, let me pull the thing out, because it's Yowza, which is humongous. 560 yards per 225 stitch gram, and this color is called Zephyr.
Ooh.
So, hey, interesting. Rhinebeck 2024. So maybe it was a Rhinebeck color.
But
So this was almost the color of my car. The car that was, it turned out to be wrong, but yeah, I'll take pictures and y'all will see it. But
Pretty.
look at all the
I
different
can see
shades.
speckles.
Yeah, you got some nice speckles, and some of them are a little bigger than. But then you get these little bits of red, and you get like this brown, purpley brown
Very
bit.
pretty.
So it's yeah. So this is just a really nice, slightly oversized vest. It's meant to be a little bigger so you can wear more layers comfortably in it.
Yep.
And like I said, it's a crochet for Detroit knots. The only thing is, like, the way she gives you the pattern is on a Google Doc that you cannot see. I can't seem to print out. So it's meant to be like a live thing where we can all add comments to. But I don't really want to add comments to that. I'd rather put them in the conversation chain because on a Discord. So I feel like an old person because I'm not really used to using Discord. So,
Yeah, I don't really like it.
I used it once for something, and I also didn't. But it might be that I didn't understand exactly how it worked, so I was just confused.
Yeah.
Well, Wool and Pine uses it, and apparently I'm still part of their Discord. You don't ever get kicked out. You do one test and you're with them forever. And so I get to.
We've always been here.
But that, yes, you have. So when I had a question about stowaway, there was something on the chart that was off. They had a square missing on the chart, which kind of throws that whole row off.
Yeah.
So I popped in and I said, and they're like, "Well, thank you. Do you want anything for that?" I go, "No, I don't need that. But I just want to give you the information. I'm moving on. I have finished a sweater. I've almost finished. The pocket just has to be sewn down, and I got one more sleeve, and stowaway will be done. But that's a different podcast. Anyway, but right now, this is the primary thing that is on my hooks right now.
Fun.
And I did have to go down a hook size, surprisingly, because I was just getting a little too loose and comfortable. Could have been the caffeine.
I feel like that would make me crochet tighter, but
considering that the caffeine was, I'd had a bad migraine, so the caffeine relaxed me. It did the opposite.
Got it.
Also, hey, I did this till 2 a.m. That would only be midnight your time, but
it's still 2 a.m. your time. That's what matters.
It's still 2 a.m.
But it doesn't really matter what time it is in our house.
It's still several hours past Katie's bedtime.
It's like lots of hours past my bedtime. 6?
That's true. Otherwise, sometimes I go to bed earlier. I definitely wake up later, but not really, because in California time, I'm up by like 5:30.
Sure, but you don't live in California.
But I feel like it's in California. It feels like. Anyway.
So, got it. Well, I am working on...
Katie? Yeah.
Oh, I am working on... I was talking about porcelain when we were doing our last podcast, right? I have to turn on my flashlight so that you guys can actually see anything, because I'm sitting in the dark. So there's the...
Ooh. Oh, that's so pretty.
So that's the
front. Oh, Katie, that's beautiful.
That's the back. I was telling knitters when I was working on it the other day that I don't necessarily recommend this pattern. There are things I started and ripped this multiple times and ripped out whole sections multiple times. But some of it was the pattern and some of it was me, because I wanted with this sweater to try and be better about like not letting things slide. Like if I could do it better, I wanted to redo it. And so like I was talking about on our last podcast, she has you like cast on and then come across and cast on and back and forth to do the shoulder shaping.
Yeah.
But I cast on all the stitches and did short rows. And then it's knitted like from the back to the underarm. And then you pick up stitches and do the front down to the underarm and join it. So the front and the back are flat, but there's also color work bands in that section. And I hate knitting color work on the purl side, like knitting it flat, because it just looked terrible. So
Yeah.
I knitted the front to the color work, and I knitted the back to the color work, and then I cast on a steek. Look at that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to
Woo!
steek my armholes
Applause.
open, and it is making
Love
me much
it.
happier with how it is looking. So that is
You know what's making me really happy
what.
is that you're knitting this first.
Yes, I will.
You're going ahead, making all these decisions, and I will just be copycatting you.
Somebody asked me the other day, they were like, "Are you writing down notes?" And I was like, "No, but I probably should be."
Don't worry, I just wrote them down.
Okay, yeah. Cast on some steek stitches, do the top part in the round. What else? Do short rows for the neck shaping. Yeah.
Yep.
And then if that gets too
Nice. Thank you.
complicated, I have a sock that there's my sock that I am working on.
Ah,
So this is,
I like the colors of that.
this is,
so you have a place to have a mental break.
yeah, because sometimes when we're doing book club, I have to you have to think a little bit harder than just talking about what you're knitting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I have backup
If
projects.
it's your book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
If it's your book, you got to think.
I have to be in charge. So
Yep.
that's what I have in front of me today. And speaking of
Fun.
book, who wants to talk about a book? This month
Me.
This month we read The Mercies by Kiran, Millwood, Hargrave. And I don't have the blurb like normal. I actually found like a little bit longer synopsis, or not a synopsis. It's kind of like it's an article from churchtimes.co/UK, written by, hold on, let me scroll down because it just went away. This article is by Dr. Natalie K. Watson, and it's also where I'm getting some of our discussion questions. So shout out to them because this was a useful article for me to go through. So talking about colonialism, one of the expanding empires of the past that treated those they encountered in far-flung lands like less human, one continent is often forgotten: in Europe. Those edges of the known world closer to our own that had likewise become the subject to control and to exploit was what was regarded as less than civilized and perhaps thereby also as dangerous. Kiran, Millwood Hargrave takes us to the island of Vardo in the northeast of Norway. At the time, it is still very much uncharted territory and yet not undiscovered, owing its strategic importance to access to the Barents Sea. And what has been discovered needs to be controlled. The desire and need to control, to pacify in the name of civilization and essentially Christianity, to eradicate in the name of Christianity what is left of the traditional ways to manage life, where to turn in the face of adversity is at the heart of the Mercies. All of Vardo's adult men were drowned in a particular storm, a powerful storm, at sea on Christmas Eve in 1617. Traditional divisions of labor and community functions can no longer be maintained, but life has to go on somehow. While it is acceptable for the women of Vardo to make provision for their daily needs, a line is irreversibly crossed when they take to the sea to gather fish, and when one of them dares to wear trousers, and this being among the crimes of Kirstin, who has emerged as a community leader after the storm, and is accused. The action in the novel begins to gain pace when Kirstin is accused of witchcraft, of conjuring up the storm that deprived the island of men, including her own husband. In contrast to the control exercised by the men is the encounter between the two women, Marn and Ursa. Marn has never known anything but life in Vardo and is its way of making a living with scant resources and at the mercy of the sea and the elements. Ursa is the daughter of a ship owner in Bergen who has fallen on hard times during the death of his wife. Her father has lost money as a result of bad decisions, so he is more than ready to offer passage and the hand of his daughter to a Scotsman who's been approved to one of the lensmen, which is a district governor's commissioners at Vardo. Thus Ursa, as she feels, sold off to a much older man whom she does not know and who does not appear to have any tenderness. Together with him, she boards the ship north to her new life as a commissioner's wife in Vardo, a life for which she has not in the least prepared. Completely incapable of seeing of even the simplest household tasks, let alone a more or less self-sufficient life, Ursa asks Marn to help build bridges to the women of Vardo and together they become observers of another storm that is unleashed on the island, the brutal prosecution of those suspected of sorcery and witchcraft, and the hysteria caused by the fear of it among the members of the community. Life in Vardo is governed not so much by governance and leadership, be it of the king in a faraway Christiania, or of the lensman in the Vardarhus, but by the weather and the sea. Varda is a self-contained community, and thus the outside world has begun to make its mark on it, not merely in the form of some trading for necessities, which the residents cannot produce themselves, but chiefly in the form of the shirka. Although the shirka is well established and attended by most women, it is there that the divisions of community begin to take hold. Although the Norwegian women of Vardo attend the shirka, they're also the Sami, a segment of the local population endemic to Denmark, a transient community termed Laps. They are somewhat akin to gypsies, but their magics deal in wind and other weather. They move around the land without possessing it, and they have their own traditions and practices not yet reined in by the shirka, for where there is from time to time a need. A community of women without men needs to be kept under control by whatever means. Initially, the lensman sends a new pastor to take over the shirka and to preach to the women, but he proves unable to command respect, so as a commissioner, Absalon Coronet is sent. He is already taken part in a witch trial and has, as his unsuspecting wife finds out, was involved in the death of the victim. It is gaining this knowledge about what her husband is capable of, which will confirm and strengthen Ursa's disgust with the man who forces himself on her. Christianity does not necessarily appear in good light in the Mercies. It is something that remains essentially alien and has little to offer by the way of hope or light for the community. Practices of folk religion once seemed to be at best superstition and at worst witchcraft. To be punished by death are perhaps not part of life in a modern urbanized society, but the desire to control, to create boundaries between genders and different groups of people or even nations remains, as does the need for encounter in order for those to survive. As does the need for encounter in order to survive. And there is the need to remember the women of Vardo who died accused of witchcraft, and this too is part of the story of Northern Europe and Christianity. This book was loosely based on a true story. It is true that there was, the storm that took the island and the men of the island and the women, had to come together and then were accused of witchcraft. And the epilogue of the book says something like 70 women died during this time.
Wow.
This is a novelization of, an imagination of what life was like during that time. But it was somewhere in the 70s, I think, of the number of women put to death during that time in Norway. So that is where we will begin today. But before I jump into any of my book club questions, I want to get you guys your feel for this. What were your thoughts? Did you enjoy it?
I thought it was a very well written book.
Mm-hmm.
I am mad at myself that I didn't finish listening to it and reading it before, because I was going between the book and the audio.
Mm-hmm.
I'm mad at myself that I didn't finish it before the election.
Ah.
Because I feel like I would have been I could have enjoyed it more.
Sure.
Instead, it just added to my general melancholy of the last week or so.
Yeah.
But I think it was a really important story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, as promised, it was from a point of view, like a regional point of view that I haven't been to before.
Right.
So I enjoyed that a lot. We have been here before, though, Kaity, because this is almost contemporary to Everybody Knows Your Mother's a Witch.
I was thinking about that today.
That was set, that was set in 1625, in a Germanic region, but not the same region.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Similar time period.
It brought to mind, Kepler's mom.
Yep.
But I thought it was a good book. How about you, Kiran?
I loved it. I loved it so much that I actually am reading. When we get to what we read next, I've got some to add about it because I like this author. I did really enjoy the characters and how she described them. I have some favorites that I'm like, but even the whole premise of, oh, you survived instead of letting yourself just die because there's no man to take care of you. You must be a witch.
Yeah.
Right.
Shame on you for surviving.
Right.
Without us.
Right. The woman
and
woman
doing
who saves them all, castigated.
And doing it better. Shame on you.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I got really angry and I said I might have said what the fuck quite a few times. I got very emotionally involved. Also,
Right
probably
on.
because of the world that we live in, and
Right.
I'm
Right.
like, no. So this was actually, I felt like this was actually a good. I had a very different emotional response than if we had read this, say, a couple years ago
Sure.
before everything happening. But yeah, so I give it 3 thumbs up if I had a third thumb.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that.
I have to say, like, I just felt kind of resigned to like, this is how it's gonna go for them.
Yeah.
But I
You know
was
it's not going to
pleased
end
by
well.
the ending. Well, I was pleased that the ending wasn't as bad as it could have been. I really felt like
Yeah.
Yeah.
we were gonna go towards a darker, worse ending for everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
interesting how the book, I mean, we're starting off our discussion with the end of the book, which is fine. But how the book ended was, it wasn't what you wanted it to be, right? Like, I wanted those
No.
terrible people
Right.
to see
Yeah.
justice, and but realistically you knew that was not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
History's just shown
the
us.
worst guy died, so that's good, but even then
Yep.
it's you couldn't have really hoped for a whole lot better, knowing that, what kind of story
Yeah.
we're being told.
Yeah.
We are
Of
based in
course.
reality.
Yeah,
In
exactly.
historical reality.
Yep. All right. My first question says, quote, "With you and a small number of God-fearing men, we can beat back the darkness even in the ever dark of winter. Even here at the edge of civilization, souls must be saved. Are the actions of the Lensman and his commissioners in the name of the king a form of colonialism, and are they justified?"
Yes and no.
Yeah, right? That's pretty clear to me.
Yeah.
Yes, this is colonialism.
They are.
No, that was not justified.
It's not colonialism in the form of conquering another race. Although, from what I understand, the Sami are
Sami
they
are,
are an
I think,
indigenous people. They are an
yeah,
indigenous
exactly.
people of their area,
Yeah.
and they
Yes.
are facing cultural erasure in the same way that other indigenous people all over the
Mhm.
world
Hmm.
That's true.
have had to suffer from the hands of powerful European
Right.
colonists.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
The
Well, it's
absolute
colonization of the Christian world, which has driven
yeah.
much of the colonialism of our modern world, or up till now in history, let's say.
Mhm.
right. This
And
is
it was a good. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's reminiscent of like Californian history, right? With the fathers
Yeah,
and the missions. It's kind of the
Missions.
same idea,
Yep.
which I would classify
Yep.
that as
'Cause-
colonialism.
Yep.
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, it reminds me of like there was something he said, and maybe it was what you just read,
Mm.
of like I need to bring God's law to them.
Right.
If it's outside of
These
God, it is
souls
bad.
must be saved. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like, oh, okay, that reminded me like, this is what drives Christianity to say that like I have to fix you.
Yes.
I have to get you to do it my way because I have to save you and fix you.
Right.
Because if
But
it's not,
But who's going to benefit from that? It's not. You're not
well,
really coming from us. That at no point have I ever heard anyone with that attitude really come from a sense of empathy, like I'm really going to save you. It's a I'm going to get more benefits in heaven if I collect these souls.
well,
Is
I'm a
what
Yeah.
I
warrior
think.
for God, right? Yeah. So
Ugh.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that
Yeah.
I don't know. I think at its core, right? Like the idea is these people need God because I have this thing that they don't know about that's going to be like they need it. So I'm going to give it to them whether they like it or not, right? And most of the time those people also have a thing that they think is very important. And their thing is not any
Mm-hmm.
better than the other person's thing, except that other person has the power to then make you take the thing that they are like, this is important, take this thing. Yeah, it's
You don't want the thing. I have my own thing.
right. But I think
Oh,
at the
you
core,
must be evil if you won't take my thing.
I think at the core of it, it's like, yes, this is good. Everybody, it's being sold as like, well, you're trying to save your neighbor, you're trying to save your friend, right? Or these people over here that I've heard things about. I've never actually been there myself, but like I hear there's witches over there, and we can't let that stand. And then,
and it always, yeah.
well, and then the commissioner shows up, and he's like, yes, witches. It's like, well, what evidence have you seen that there are witches? There's runes above your door. This lady has some dolls in her house. That's kind of it, you know?
Yeah.
That one's wearing pants over there, but we could ask her to not wear pants. Yeah.
Oh, but they had very, very petty witnesses.
Yes.
Jealousy and the desire to, what is it? Adjacency, being adjacent
Right.
to power. The desire to hold.
Yeah. That brings us right into my next question is, what do you think of Toril, Siegfried, and the other Shirka women? What do you think was their motivation? That's what I think you just kind of, touched on totally.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, both things, like jealousy, feelings of inadequacy in their own well-being, because they couldn't save themselves, right? They didn't have the wherewithal that Kirstin had to dig herself out and to dig the others out of the snow,
right.
Literally.
Totally.
And so there was no graciousness for that. It was only like, your help points out my inadequacies, and that makes me feel bad and angry. I'm going to direct that anger to you.
Right.
Yeah. Instead of sitting with this discomfort and trying to figure myself out, you're causing me pain, so you must be stopped.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Or they read the writing on the wall. Like, maybe they're smarter than we think, and they read, they see where it's going, and they're like, I'm going to align myself with this person, and sell my soul to do it.
One or two, weren't there a couple that kind of showed regret?
Yeah,
even
Edna,
if they would not retract their statement.
Yeah, I think Edna was one of them, and Fru Olafstarter was kind of one of those too, until she then was accused of being a witch herself.
And Marin's mother.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Marin's mother is like, what have we started?
Yeah.
Do you really think they didn't have the mindset to think far enough about what the consequences would be? Or do you think they were just trying to take the heat off their own back? I just am trying to figure out their motivation.
I think they saw,
besides jealousy,
I think they saw a way to justify the fact that they did not like these people, when they saw that this was a way that they could be justified in the way that they were already acting, toward them, that they could be like, see, I was right, I don't know.
Yeah. I never liked her anyway.
Right.
See, she was a witch.
I always knew she was a witch anyway. This question I'm confused by. It says, Marn is an astute and often shrewd observer of her community. Do you agree with her comment about witchcraft? If it's true, then why do the Lensman and Cornet feel the need to eradicate those involved in it? I don't know what comment this question's referring to, because it doesn't give a quote. But why do the Lensman and the Cornet feel the need to eradicate those involved in what they perceive to be witchcraft? I think we touched on that with the first one, is that, well, except we haven't really. Because, yes, you're doing it for king and country and God and Christianity and all of those things. But also because these were bad people that they could find, that, the king could find these people that are willing to do these horrible things. And those horrible people that did them enjoyed doing it. So, yes, it's motivated by, maybe it starts off with being motivated by wanting to expand, and bring God to heathen people throughout the world, and then it just turns into something that he became obsessed with, and I think found pleasure in doing.
Well, why do violent men hurt women?
Right.
Yeah.
It's a tale as old as time, right?
Mm-hmm. and here's someone who can be violent,
Mm-hmm.
and society can hold up as a virtuous man.
Right.
Like, we're faced with all these violent men in leadership, and much of society is saying these aren't good men,
Mm-hmm.
and yet they are still being placed. So imagine a society where that violence
Is
is shown as a
unchecked.
tool of virtue. Well, it's
Yeah.
a tool of virtue. It's good. These are
Wow.
virtuous men. They're taking the witches out of our
It's
communities.
400 years later, and the women will still be protected whether we wanted to be or not. It's the same exact
Right.
story.
Yeah. Oh my God. Thank
Isn't
God the men
that
are here. We were starving without the men. We weren't getting our shit together and taking care of our community.
Nope. We
it's
were
that
absolutely
quote
dying.
it's that quote whether they want it or not
Right.
that has been recently spoken, that was spoken back then, that just really just makes you want to punch something
400 years,
or
guys.
someone.
400 years. All right.
Where are we?
I think we're a little angry this episode. Um,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
question
Sorry.
question 4 says Absalom
Sorry,
Cornet.
not sorry.
No, not sorry. It sounds like a prayer and more like a knell. How would you describe Cornet?
Yeah.
What are the characteristics of his relationship with Ursa? And does their relationship change?
Well, I think that it's probably a very good representation of what a lot of young women's married lives are like.
Probably.
Mm-hmm.
Um, treated as a property,
Mm-hmm.
all autonomy taken from them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she has this little bit of coin that her sister gave her,
That she
and
quickly
she
gives away.
uses it. Yep, but she uses it without thinking that that's a problem.
Right.
She
Yeah.
thinks she has the freedom to buy herself some, like, she didn't have even proper apparel to be in the climate she was going to.
Right.
And she equips herself and shares some kindness with a boat urchin.
Right.
And it's people who, like, the men for whom he worked with didn't even know his name when he was no longer going to carry on with their journey.
Right.
um
Yeah, but
yeah,
you're right.
I
I
think
think
it was probably a really
it's probably pretty
good
indicative.
characterization.
Yeah.
Hmm.
How does their relationship change throughout the book? Because he does genuinely seem like he strives for her approval in some ways, and he
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
desires her. Like, he enjoys her company, and I think he's always wanting more from her. But it doesn't seem
Hmm.
like it's necessarily in like a creepy way, you know? Like, I think he genuinely
No.
wants a wife that will be a wife for him. And Ursa,
Yeah.
number one, doesn't know how to do that because she has not been prepared at all for the situation that she's been put in,
Nope.
and doesn't like him.
And
Right.
she could have, I feel like she could have grown to like him, but when she heard what his true character was,
Yeah.
that how trying to reconcile this person who is a force but is trying to be kind to me, but at
Right.
the same time can be so proud for this torturous, hateful thing that he's done to women, and that could be me.
Yeah.
You can't trust
Hmm.
that. You can never have an intimate connection with that person
Yeah,
that you cannot trust
I
that
think
way.
you're right in that she probably could have made it work and been like, I
Yeah.
have friends, and yeah, my husband, I don't necessarily love him, but it's fine. But at some point, when she learns for a fact that he was not only involved in the trial of a witch, but actually killed her himself, then everything flips, and she's like, no, absolutely not.
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and the people that his bosses that he strived to please, the regional people, they're just as horrible.
Right.
they're all they're not they're It reminds me of the, like, when my mother-in-law would talk about going on business trips with co-work with other people that her husband worked with and their wives.
Mm-hmm.
And you're forced to be in culture and community with these people you don't know, and everything about their character just discussed to you, but you have to smile because it's your husband's job on the line.
Right.
And I feel like she's put in this hard place where she cannot really tell them how absolutely horrible she thinks they are. Not that she would, I don't think her character would anyway, but you just can't wait to go back to the people that you feel community with.
Sure.
Yeah.
Would you describe this as a feminist novel?
I think I would.
In
a good way.
I had a hard time with this question because initially I'm like, yeah, but also not
also
really.
No.
Because
I would not describe it as a feminist story, but I think it is an important moment to bear witness to and examine in feminist work.
Sure. I could stand by that.
Yeah.
It's not
like,
it's not a feminist story in that like the women are the heroes and everybody's happy and it's justice and all that is great. But you're right in that this is a period of time that's important in the history of women, and the things that we supposedly are supposed to learn from this that apparently 400 years later are not all that much different. We're just a little bit more civilized about how we do things, you know. But no, I think maybe, yes and no
for now.
Yeah.
Like it certainly appeals to the feminist nature.
Yeah.
But it's not a good story.
No.
Like it's not an uplifting story.
No, we're not having fun.
I grow to care about the characters. I like their individual stories, and I get to see their personalities and also their sisterhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I think oftentimes we're in a world that doesn't. I think sometimes when you call something feminist, people automatically say political and they shut down. But this is a woman's story. This is a story about women.
Right.
That I think more stories about women need to be kept up and spoken up about.
Yeah.
You know, so because otherwise our own stories will get washed out.
Yeah, I agree. Those are the questions I've come to the end to for this article that I referenced, but I also found a resource that might be interesting for us for book club in the future from supersummary.com. They have a new tool that's in beta testing for AI discussion questions, like a generator for the book. So you tell it like what type of question, what topic, what sort of audience you're looking for, and it spits out some questions. So I have some AI questions here that we can try out, which I thought was kind of interesting. So these are questions related to characters specifically. So this first one's about Marn. In the Mercies, Marn displays courage fleeing Vardo when accused with witchcraft. Would you have supported her decision to leave behind her community, or do you believe that there was value in her staying to fight for justice? And how does Marn's choice reflect the universal struggle between personal safety and communal loyalty? Because I think for a lot of this book, boy, was I like, somebody do something. But nobody has any power or ability to do anything. Yeah. So do you think that she made the right decision?
Yeah, in her time and place, yes.
Yeah.
Because even the women banding together would not have had, even if all the women in the village had banded together, it would not have changed out the outcome because of the cultural and the culture and society that they lived in. Right. They would have brought more men in to tamp it down. It would have been one army versus a bigger army.
There's nothing, and there was nothing left for her there.
She had to take her son to safety so that maybe he had a chance not to grow up with that attitude.
Well, that's Dina.
Oh, you're talking about Dinah. Yeah, Dina.
Oh, wrong one. Wrong. Sorry.
But it's
But
same thing.
same need.
Yeah.
Though.
Yeah.
I have a question about Dina, actually. As someone who never fully integrates into the Vardo community, she represents the tension between cultural identity and assimilation. Can you empathize, excuse me, that's a hard word to say, empathize with her decision to maintain her cultural practices despite the dangers, or might there have been a benefit in attempting to conform into the society?
Nope.
Nope.
I love her so much for staying true to herself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She tried so hard in every way.
Yeah.
She tried to honor her husband and the life he saw for them by staying with her mother-in-law and sister-in-law.
Who was hateful.
And
I mean, her mother-in-law.
Her mother-in-law. So much love in that perseverance.
Mm-hmm.
Love and bravery.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that she continues to
but
do
at some point,
after his death.
Yeah. At some point, like, know better, do better. She knew there was a better way for them to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she did right by him and left.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, we can only control what we can control, right? So
yeah,
she could control where she and her son were and thriving.
Yeah, she kind of represents...
She took control of that.
Go ahead, Karin.
Well, she knew that at no point, no matter how much she tried to assimilate, she would always be othered.
Right.
She would never be fully accepted. And she would be giving up all of her own health and autonomy for people that would never ever appreciate her, at the risk of her, her child not becoming what her husband was. Because clearly her husband kind of went against society norms to fall in love with her and marry her and accept her who she was. And I do think that by leaving with her son, she did the best to honor her husband and what he would want for the child as well.
I like that. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, she kind of represents like the only thing that they could do. Like I was saying, like somebody do something, nobody can do anything. But the one thing that they could do is leave. But even then, they can't really do that, because what's the future for her?
Yeah.
Well, she could probably unite with her own people at some point.
I hope so. Yeah.
Which that's not a solution necessarily. But the Sami do survive. They do survive.
Yeah.
Culturally and make it to the now.
Sure.
It's no easy path, but the Sami people do still exist in this world.
Right. So
we could hope that she united with her people and they lived a happy and healthy life as long as they
I'm gonna believe that.
Yeah.
I liked that the story even introduced me, because until recently I'd never heard of the Sami. But just in
I heard of them a little bit in textile tradition.
In the last 6 months, I had heard. So there's someone I had been following on social media who is Sami, and she spoke up about her culture is under attack. We had a certain amount of governmental protections, but the government changed, and now those protections are no longer there.
Sure.
And I was like, I can understand it, but I'm like, I had no idea. It never occurred to me that there are regions of the world where people don't look that different, but they have different cultural ways.
Right.
I never thought about people like Northern European countries having indigenous people. I just didn't know. I was ignorant.
Our next question is about Kirstin. Kirstin's leadership and ultimate fate evoke strong feelings about gender roles and victimization. Was her execution an unavoidable consequence of breaking societal norms, or could it have been prevented with greater unity among the women? And how does her story exemplify the dangers of scapegoating and blind adherence to norms? She's like the representation of what that looks like.
Yep. I don't know how in this story per se But there's a lot, like throughout history, there are those anomalies of people who live their lives outside of societal norms,
Mm-hmm.
and communities continue to support and accept them.
Yes. That doesn't happen very
So
often.
those things have happened historically. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that would have happened in this story because they
Mm-mm.
came for her,
Yeah.
not her
Mm-hmm.
by name yet, but they came to root her out
Right.
and her
She
what she
represented what
represented.
it
They came
was.
for her.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
It just made it just made me so angry. The fact that she was good at fishing, that she was able to provide and wear pants because it is more practical on a fishing boat to not be wearing a dress. I mean, that's just
Hmm.
so ridiculous how they don't. I just don't get that mindset at all.
Yeah.
It's
Just on a
okay.
practical
It's going to be
standpoint.
inflicted more on us. Don't worry.
Oh,
We're going to be
stop.
have exposure. We're going to have a lot of exposure
Yeah.
therapy to that in the next 4 years. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, it says that
um,
was her execution an unavoidable consequence of breaking societal norms? I'd like to think that back then, yes. Maybe
Yeah.
today, not so much, but who knows? I think there is more
Who
room in the
knows?
21st century for societal norms and gender roles to be played with and changed and, you know,
and people to see that there's no consequences to
right.
that.
What's going to happen to you if
That
she wears pants? Like, what's the worst that can happen? You can see that she's
What
got two
happens
legs.
to you?
Right. Nothing happens to you.
Oh
Oh
ooh.
my God, she's not a mermaid underneath like everybody else. Like she's got
But
two legs.
okay, but you can't really see her legs because they're in pants. They're covered more than if she was
But the
wearing a
fact is that
dress,
you know
like
she's
a
got
bubble
two
skirt.
legs.
Oh no!
Also, the
We
fact
just
that
thought
she's got probably
we.
pockets in those pants is also unacceptable.
That's a really good point, Katie, is that she knows she has two legs. Because there's this part when Ursa is losing her virginity,
Yep.
and she describes him entering her as he had cut or torn her down the middle or something like
He
that.
tore a
Yeah,
space of
Cut
her
it.
for him. Yeah.
Yeah, and
yeah,
like that she was so unaware of her own
Yeah.
body
yeah.
to not understand.
What was
I
happening?
mean, right, or I mean, like there's plenty of girls in present time who surely do not know what's going to happen or how it
Sure.
happens
Mm-hmm.
for the same problem,
Right.
lack of
Right.
knowledge and exposure to that knowledge rather. Um, but to not even have the wherewithal to know her own body enough
Right.
to have a sense of what might happen.
Yeah, that's true.
Um, to be so unaware of your own personhood and own body, like it's just as inane as not knowing that you have two legs
Yeah.
to
Well,
me.
remind me, how old is she when she is married off?
I think
20.
she's
So she's actually a little
19,
old.
19. So
There you go.
kind of a
Yeah.
somewhere
kind
in
of an
there.
old
Yeah.
maid from this in a society
Yeah.
standpoint,
Right.
but
Right. Right.
forgivable because her father didn't know so much. Her father didn't know.
While we're talking about Ursa, this next question says Ursa's transformation from a traditional submissive wife to someone who takes drastic action to protect a loved one invites discussion. Do Ursa's actions make her a heroine or a victim of her circumstances? And how does her journey challenge or reinforce the role of women during the time the novel is set? Like, what is her transformation? Does she change from the beginning of the novel?
Well, she has no voice and no agency at first.
Mm-hmm.
And that continues all the way until she's in the village.
Right?
Mm.
I would
Yep.
There are
actually say
people
that.
who like,
Go ahead.
go ahead. Oh no, I don't, I want to
No, I
hear
was
what you
going to
have to
say,
say.
I think that she actually is braver than you would give her credit for on paper, like initially, because there are
Mhm.
multiple times where she does do things where you're like, that seems risky, or that seems dangerous, or I don't know if that's a good idea. Like, she doesn't attend like the governor's dinner with her husband that night because she's like, oh, sorry, I don't feel good, I'm actually going to go, have sex with this other woman.
Yeah.
But even before that, it's like,
Well, that's later.
that's
But
true.
that's later,
But even before that, it's there were little things here and there where that I think she was actually pretty brave in her adversity, because it would be easy to be like, she's meek, she doesn't, stand up for a whole lot. But I actually think she kind of does for whatever she could do.
I think when she was home. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
frozen for a moment.
Oh,
Okay.
no, we hear you.
I think when she was home, the dynamics of a woman in her of a young woman in her father's home
Mm-hmm.
is different than
Sure.
when she is out. It's a first time away from home, first time, and her
Mhm.
husband goes off and leaves her to do work, for a day or so at a time. So I don't even know how many friends she had back when she was with her father, because of their life circumstances having changed. That I feel like she kind of grew her personality and got to see what she was made of for herself. I don't think she even knew she was capable of that until she was put in a place where women are doing things for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They did it out of necessity because no one wants to lay down and just die, you know. And plus they
Right.
have children to take care of, and you're not going to let your children starve, so you're going to,
Mhm.
as a decent human being, do what you can to keep people alive. And I think the community helped change her.
Mm-hmm.
But I think those very first contacts of who she made friends with had the biggest impact, because if she had made friends with the petty women first, I don't know. Would she be the same, or would she have pulled away from them
I think she
because
probably
instinct would have told her not to be with them?
I think the fact that she had such a important relationship with her sister growing up means that I don't think she would have fallen into the trap of the Shirka women
Mm.
who, like, I think she
Yeah,
knew that being friends with other women and not, you know, like, she's a girl's girl.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that I was also thinking about that as far as like I think that was pretty brave of her during like when she's in the Wednesday meetings and stuff, or when she's at the Shirka. She's always sitting with Marn. And I know Marn is sort of like in the middle of the scale when it comes to how witchcrafty you are. Like, she's not Kirstin,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
she's not, a pious young lady who's at church every day. Because she could have easily gone to go sit with, Siegfried and Toril and uh, the people that her husband probably would have preferred her to be spending her time with, but she doesn't, and she knows that he knows who she's friends with.
Hmm.
Yeah. I I think that Marin is such a good like character to lead us through this story.
Mm,
What's the
Hmm.
way you just described her? Um because she is the middle.
yeah.
She's such a good character to illustrate to us how it could go either way for just a middle of the road person.
And
Like she's not
how far they take it,
good.
because then at the end they're like, well, you're up next, you were named. It's like, well, what did I do? you know
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was just
what?
she didn't do anything outward
No.
in any
She had a
fashion.
sister-in-law who they didn't like, and her mom
Yep.
didn't like her, and her mom is friends with the
Hmm.
Shirka women who also don't really like her and what she's been doing, and I think that's kind of it.
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
Yeah.
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 That kind of reaches the end of my questions that I have, but is there anything else that you wanted to touch on? Anything we haven't talked about? Anything we skipped over? I I felt like this book was very well written. Like I enjoyed reading it. I thought I thought some of the characters were a little flat, and I think it was a little slow to get to something actually happening. And when things were happening, it was very compelling and very well written and terrifying and sad.
Yes.
So I would give this, maybe we should start rating. Like, how many stars would you give it? Like, if you were rating your review, I think I'd probably give it a 4.
This is a 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4 for me.
Yeah, 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But what would have earned it a 5? Or even a half?
I just think that it would have been interesting to go a little bit deeper into some of the themes. And also, I feel like there were things that were touched on that I wish we had kind of circled back around or had been explained a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like,
I'd agree.
Was her nephew, what was his name, Eric, was he sick? Was he, like, what was going on with him?
Yeah.
And why, I don't know, there were just like a couple little things that, like, it felt like plant and payoff, but then there wasn't payoff for it. And that's kind of my only, complaint.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I guess. Also, like, it's going to be purely an emotional rating for me.
Yeah.
Is that I didn't feel good while I was reading this.
Yeah, that's fair.
So even though it's a very good book,
that's an influence.
I didn't feel good, and it didn't make me feel good.
I'm sorry.
It made me feel resigned.
I'm sorry we listened to this book
time.
when we did, but I'm also kind of not, because I think Karin said, like, it gives you some context, and I think it does what the book is trying to do in an even better way.
Yeah.
Because she's trying to make you mad about it, and you're like, boy, am I.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So both bad and
absolutely
glad I read it now. Probably wasn't a great place for my brain to be right now, but, Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
We all agree.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. Yeah. So it's maybe not even the fault of the book. I think that is like, Kaity, that your reading of it, that there was some depth that maybe got trimmed or didn't get explored, is a fair technical point, but, like, my rating is purely from emotion, so it's not even the fault of the book, it's the fault of the world we're living in.
That is a valid reason. All right, well, who wants to talk about what else they read this month? Guess what? I didn't read anything.
No.
Can you believe it?
I'm shocked.
Would you read it?
Both of it? Yeah, we've...
Oh, who's going?
Well, so Karin, you said you read some things pertinent, or maybe other books by this author?
I did. I read, so I highly suggest both of you read The Dance Tree. Similar vein of history, The Dance Tree. It's set in a similar type of situation, not quite so northern. There's this young girl, she's married, she lives with her family and her husband's family, and they've been married for 10 years and she has not given birth. She has had multiple miscarriages up until like right almost to birth, or even right after birth, and the baby didn't live. And she mourns for she comes from a culture where her mother, they have a separate culture where they have to keep their culture separate. Of course, the church and the older people are trying to squelch another one where the church is not painted well, but it is historical. So she has this tree. She raises bees, and she has this gift with the bees. She knows how to calm them. She's got stings and stuff, but and scars from stings, but they have a way, they connect with her and she connects with them, and they make honey and they make beeswax, and the church buys that wax to make candles for their ceremony. So she brings income in for her in-laws family. So her husband is kind of the church is getting more corrupt. They want more money. So they end up, um, he has to go to the elder to try to fight so that their church taxes aren't being raised beyond what they can handle. And most of her bees, she has a secret hive out in the forest, which was is called the dance tree. And it's where she has mementos that represent every one of her miscarriages. And there's like 12 or more of them. There's a lot of them. She's been married for a decade and not had a child. And they've prayed over her. They've done all this stuff. But there's so much grief happening because of things that one woman goes in the town square and she's dancing uncontrollably to the point her feet are bleeding. And they're like, there's a question of, is it a holy ritual? I mean, her husband she passes out. And then gets up and starts dancing for more, day after day after day, like she's possessed. And before you know it, this group, it goes from 1 to 400, and it goes from village to village. So there's this men power.
I've heard of that phenomena having happened.
Yeah. So it's about that happening, and the characters are really, really good. The character development is really good. Again, similar, if you like, it's her style, but I feel like this was a book that came after, I think, the one we read. So she might, I'm not positive about that, but so I really, really liked
it. I'm reading the
So she does a little better job of developing those characters in more colorful ways. The other, I read two.
It has some of the magic that we were missing here.
I'm also reading Immortal Dark by I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Tigest Girma, Tigest. So this gal and her sister it's in the land of vampires and their companions. You know, vampires have rules. They're only allowed to feast off of, they're not allowed to kill anybody, and they're only allowed to feast off of certain families. That's just how the rules go. And her family has a family estate that both her parents died mysteriously, and it was just her and her sister gets kidnapped. And somehow she's getting framed in the regular world for it. But she's trying to find who took her sister, and she inherits this estate that she did not grow up in the culture of the vampire companion. And there's some agency that the companions have, but they also have to go to a university where they study the history so that everyone is on a level playing field. But it turns out, so it's kind of the story of, she doesn't want anything to do with it, but if she does not stay in the family house for 28 days, and she's got protection, so the vampire, then the vampire who is also there's only one left connected to her family. He'll get the house to himself, and he'll have a lot of power. And since she thinks that he took her sister, she's staying there. She's agreed to it, not because she cares anything about this culture or life, but she needs to get close to him to try to find her sister and find out what happened to her sister, and to prove that her sister got probably murdered by him, and then to kill him herself because she doesn't care if she dies. She's going to take him down. And you get this, honestly, these two people that hate each other, and you know that they kind of like each other at the same time. So that's really good. The other one I'm reading that I really, really enjoy is called The Dividing Sky by Jill 2. And it's about the haves and the have-nots in this future world of 2080, where everybody that has money is working all the time. So much so that they don't have space for emotions in their life. So they hire people, the have-nots, to live these experiences and bring those experiences to them. Like if you have a date with someone, you don't have time to go out on that date, and that other person that you have a date with also doesn't have time to go on the date, you hire people to go on the date for you, and they'll bring those emotions back, and that way you have a conversation. Or in the case of this one person who is trying to earn enough credits to get herself and her friends out of there and to run away, she's doing things like strapping herself to a drone that is being flown through the city to get that thrill. Anyway, it's really interesting, the dividing sky. Um,
Hmm,
so it's I but that is by, who did I write that down? By Jill Tew. Highly recommend both of
hmm,
those. Oh,
nice. Well, I read a lot.
yay! Shocker! Shocker!
Okay. First off, I'm proud of myself. I finished 2 physical books. One is
Nice.
called The Unclaimed by Prickett. Yeah, Pamela Prickett and Stephen Timmermans. It follows the case of 4 unclaimed persons after they die,
Mm-hmm.
in all
Mm.
different situations, and it follows them through the system through LA County, which I
Oh,
interact with professionally occasionally, and it was so good. Everyone I work with professionally, I want to read this book, and it's also very interesting if you've ever had a curiosity about what happens to people and what are the circumstances that lead to them, being interred as in, quote unquote paupers graves in Los
Mhm.
Angeles. It's very interesting and really heartening, and should scare everyone that people are can easily find themselves in those circumstances, depending on how their
Uh-huh.
life goes. Really makes it important to protect yourself from that and to keep ties with people. If you ever find yourself, listeners, if you ever find yourself without an easily available next of kin, you can put an advanced healthcare directive in place, and that would solve almost all of these problems for the people who go unclaimed. Um, Beautiful book. It irked me a little bit sometimes how the funeral industry was portrayed in it, but for the most part, it was really interesting. And then the other physical book I read was so good. It's maybe
Yeah.
one of the best things I've read on my own this year. The Haunting of Belkwood by Gwendolyn Kiste, Kiste. A neighborhood disappears
oh
like
wow.
Mhm.
20 years ago, and
Mhm.
it's these college age girls, and they go back to college, and they get this call that their street has disappeared, their cul-de-sac somewhere middle
Mm-hmm.
America.
Hmm.
And the novel takes you to the one of the 3 women who survived this is um, desperate for money, and these paranormal investigators have a grant, and they convince her to go back into the space, and the
Mm-hmm.
government has
Uh-huh.
like barred it off. You have to get permits to go in there, and it's
Sure.
so good. It's a haunted house. It's violence against girls. It's you can never go home again. Um,
Mhm.
it's nostalgia. It's broken families. It's looking good for the public, but you have a broken household. It was so beautiful, so beautiful, and spooky. And it was a short
Nice.
read. It was, I think, 250 pages or something.
Oh, I
So,
like
The
it.
Haunting of Elkwood, so good.
Belk.
Nice.
Wait, spell it. Belk
Uh,
Wood.
yeah, V as in Victor.
Oh, V. Velkwood.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I want to read other books by this girl. She's won like a ton of awards, and I think she writes the same kind of like, haunting weirdness kind of stuff,
Mhm.
but really, really, really good. Um, I read a series that was suggested to me as maybe, if you're a Sarah J. Maas fan, that you might like this. And I would say it was good, but it wasn't as good as a Kotar. Um,
Uh-huh.
it's the Kingdom, so it's 3 books in this unit, but I think this author is gonna like build a lot in this world she's built. So these 3 books are Kingdom of the Cursed, Kingdom of the Feared, Kingdom of the Wicked. Carrie Scalco, Carrie Maniscalco. This 18-year-old girl, her twin sister is murdered, her heart is torn out, and But you can't quite tell the time frame, but it's like late 1800s, and it's witches and demons and a twist.
Mm.
Um, and it's a slow burn, but still real dirty.
Oh, it's
So there's
is
like
is it fey
no
porn?
consummation, no consummation for 3 books. I'm not going to lie to you guys. And yet, still
3
very dirty.
books.
Still very dirty.
Oh, a little bit of fey porn, right?
Well, there's no fae. These are demons. It's demons and witches and
Oh, okay.
werewolves.
Okay.
But like she sometimes gets lost in her fantasies. So like
Got it.
the fantasies are spicy, but the characters are not actually consummating, which is it's an important part
That's okay.
of their interaction. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was good. It was good, and I want to read more. I think she shifted sort of kind of like Lee Bardugo in her Grisha verse, where there's like these groups of books that fit together.
Yeah.
I think that there's a couple more in the same universe that I just stumbled upon this week that I think now are telling a different story of one of the other characters. It's essentially
cool.
like hell with the 7 deadly sins are brothers. And so I think she's telling the story of another brother in another set of novels. So I'm going to investigate that a little bit more. So in the like Midwest make you gonna cry, I cheerfully refuse. Someone suggested to me This Tender Land by William Kent Kruger. It's set in the 1930s in Minnesota in a gosh, I'm looking for the right word. I think you just call it, it was an Indian school, but these 2 white boys have been placed in it. And the ugliness and abuses of all of the children in the story, and then their escape, and the ties that tie these characters together across the river lifestyle of Minnesota to St. Louis, and it's rip your heart out, crying, ugly tears, but heartening and great too.
Okay, putting a star on that one.
And I want to read more from him. He's got some series. He's got, and then he's got several standalone novels. I revisited The Sanatorium, which we read together some time ago by Sarah Mears, because she's up to 3 books with with the main character.
Oh wow!
Oh wow!
So I reread The Sanatorium because I want to catch up, and then I read The Retreat, which is the second book.
I read this Retreat.
It's good. So the third book is called The Wilds. I'm going to read that next. I read a fun short story book with my daughter called Scream and Scream Again. It was like 20 short stories geared towards young adults, or not young adults, towards middle schoolers that were scary, creepy stories. It was very good, very fun. I started Slow Horses by Mick Karin, which there's now an Apple TV show. I don't think I'm going to watch the Apple TV show. The book was great. Someone here recommended it and said, she was laughing out loud at the characters.
Oh, that's cool.
It's spy, but it's like crash British humor as well, and it's very good. And I tried watching the show yesterday. I'm like, this is almost verbatim the book, and the book was better.
Yeah, might as well just enjoy the book.
Stick with the books. And now, while I work on things for our boutique that is upcoming, I realize that it's become really important mental fuel for me to get into my favorite genre for this time of year, which are holiday romances. So
nice.
I just read one this last couple days called A December to Remember.
Okay.
It's based in the UK, and I didn't write the author's name down. What happened was I was at Barnes & Noble, and they had a whole end cap of them, and I was like, oh yeah, that's going to put me in the spirit. So I took a
Mm-hmm.
picture of the end cap, and I'm just working my way through their recommendations.
Okay.
Cool. That's smart.
I was hoping
It's a good
there's
way to
like
do it.
pictures of some people's feet in the picture, and I'm like, I hope they knew I wasn't like sneaking a picture of them because that's creepy.
Yeah.
Okay, a December to
I
remember.
just care about the
Yeah,
books.
I'm just taking a picture of this end cap. A December to Remember by Jenny Bayliss. And the premise is this like eccentric keeper of a curiosity shop sets his three daughters up who are all estranged from him and from each other, that they, to get their inheritance, they have to come back to this town, that he would keep them for 1 month over the summer. And that's how they like built their sisterhood, because they're from three different moms.
Mhm.
um,
Mm.
and so they have to come together to complete putting on a winter solstice celebration for their community. And it's so good, so sweet. And they had the best quote in it, which was like the thing I needed to hear. And I just heard, there was just in the part I listened to last night, which is, there's this like mean landlord who's trying to evict one of the characters, and it turns out that her father's estate actually owns the land, or they call it the freehold,
Mhm.
and that this
Mm-hmm.
mean guy only owns the lease. And so the women of the town come together to help her like legally figure this out. And the guy is like freaking out because they're right.
Haha.
And
I like it.
she says, it doesn't matter the size of the bully. The law is the law. I
Mm-hmm.
love it.
That sounds so
um,
good.
this one was really sweet. The next one I picked, which I'll talk about next time, this one's kind of like, oh, you're all kind of spoiled 30 somethings. Meh.
Yeah.
So we'll see how. I'm only halfway through this other one. We'll see how that one turns out, and I'll give you my opinion of probably several more next month.
Good to know.
Um,
Cool.
it's my turn to pick.
Woo!
Yeah. What are we reading?
I have choices. So
Okay. Lay
I'm
them on me.
I'm trying to decide for our emotional well-being. Do we
Mm.
want to like be fueled and sit in feminine
Okay.
rage,
Okay.
or do we want to comfort read? So
Mm.
your feminine rage option is Electra by Jennifer Saint, who is the author of
Uh-huh.
Ariadne, which I was giggling, Karen,
Mm.
while you were talking about one of the books you just shared.
Uh-huh.
Oh, the other Kiran
Yeah, Dance Tree.
Milgrave, yeah, Kiran Millwood Hargrave book
Uh-huh.
was reviewed by this author.
Oh.
Mm.
So this book is called Electra. I went into Timbre and I said, because I've been looking and looking and trying to make a decision, and I said, I want a suggestion from Female Rage. I want a suggestion from Comfort. This was recommended as the Female Rage.
Okay.
Which I know we've done like a lot of Greek, so that's my only like hold back on this one too. When Clytemnestra marries Agamemnon, she ignores the insidious whispers about his family line. But when, on the eve of the Trojan War, Agamemnon betrays Clytemnestra in the most unimaginable way, she must confront the curse that has long ravaged their family. In Troy, Princess Cassandra has the gift of prophecy, but carries a curse of her own. No one will ever believe what she sees. When she is shown what will
Mm.
happen to her beloved city when Agamemnon and his army arrive, she is powerless to stop the tragedy from unfolding. Electra, Clytemnestra, and Agamemnon's youngest daughter. Okay, Electra, who is their youngest daughter, wants only for her beloved father to return home from the war. But can she escape her family's bloody history, or is her destiny bound by violence too? So it's sort of like a prequel to Stoneblind almost, because I
Mm-hmm.
believe Clytemnestra and Cassandra had some input in that mythology.
Yeah, I don't remember, but that does sound
And it's
familiar.
probably because I watched Clash of the Titans and that was more in it
Oh.
than in the book.
Mm. Got it.
So anyway, that's a choice. Three powerful women.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
Counterfeit by Kirstin Chen. That
Mm-hmm.
was also like one of the things I liked learning from the Mercies is I guess that if we were in Norway, that would be Kirstin.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like
Who knew?
learning that that is a sound that I did not know we were to make with that
I was interested when I listened to the whole book, and I was like, I wonder how these things are spelled. And then I was reading questions. I was like, who's Kirstin? And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
See, I started
That's
reading.
apparently how you say that.
Yeah, I started reading, and then I went to the audiobook, and I was like,
You're like, who's Kirstin?
Yeah.
Kirstin.
Yeah. And also interesting, like the interplay between the Scottish church and the Norwegian church, because kirk is a word for church in Scotland. So I like recognized it contextually written, but I hadn't ever heard shush as the pronunciation. Okay, back to this choice. Counterfeit. Ava Wong has always played it safe. As a straight-laced Chinese-American lawyer with a successful surgeon as a husband, a young son, and a beautiful home, she's built a perfect life. But beneath this facade, Ava's world is crumbling. Her marriage is falling apart, her expensive law degree hasn't been used in years, and her toddler's tantrums are pushing her to the breaking point. Enter Winnie Fang, Ava's enigmatic college roommate from mainland China. After 20 years, Winnie is looking to reconnect with her old friend, but the shy, awkward girl Ava once knew has been replaced with a confident woman of the world, dripping in luxury goods, including a coveted Birkin in classic orange. The secret of her success? Winnie has developed an ingenious counterfeit scheme that involves importing near-exact replicas of luxury handbags. Now she needs someone with a U.S. passport to help manage her business. Someone who'd never be suspected of wrongdoing, someone like Ava. But when their spectacular success is threatened and Winnie vanishes once again, Ava is left with to face the consequences. Okay. Which one?
Okay. Ooh, I don't know. This is a difficult decision. I would be down for reading either one, honestly.
That's why.
But I feel like we just did Greek mythology, so I'm leaning toward the Counterfeit, but that's my opinion.
I'm leaning towards Comfort because I got enough daily stuff to make me rage, and I kind of feel like I got to balance. I don't want to keep feeding the rage. For my own health, Kirstin Chen is where I would go.
All right, Counterfeit it is. And that's what I took the suggestions, and I'm like, I'm buying both these books because they both look great. And I would leave it to you guys to help me decide. So Counterfeit
I like that.
Perfect.
Chen. Yeah, it's a Reese's Book Club choice. It should be really fun.
Those are usually pretty good.
Yeah. So thanks for helping me choose.
Cool.
I hope you like our choice.
Mm-hmm. Yay!
Yeah, we chose.
So.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us for another book club. We appreciate you listening. If you have recommendations for future books, or if you have any thoughts about anything we talked about, we'd like to hear from you. And yeah, I guess that's kind of it, right?
The end.
We'll talk to you guys next month or in a couple weeks if you listen to our regular podcast, which you should also do that. So we'll see you in 2 weeks then.
Bye.
All right. Bye.